Hello, I'm Kimberly Henry, and this is Living the Good Life. In this series, we'll feature conversations around ways to embrace the goodness of life and take a big, juicy bite out of it. Food for the soul and the funny bone. Learn to give more time to yourself, become a better friend, lead an amazing life, and how to tell the best joke at the party. Living the good life can mean different things to different people. Whatever it is for you, I hope you'll find some inspiration here to live your most joyful, authentic life. Now, on to today's conversation. Spending time today with Jennifer, and I'm gonna test myself here, Schillaci. Is
Good
that right,
job.
Jennifer?
Yeah.
Yay, Jennifer Schillaci. I'm so glad to have you here. We've spent a little bit of time together recently. You just did the keynote at a summit that we had here a few weeks ago, and that was awesome. So I'm glad to see you again and hear your voice and kind of dive a little bit deeper into your journey. Where are you right now?
So, well, first of all, thanks for having me on. I so
Of
appreciate it.
course.
And it was such a great experience being on the summit. I couldn't have asked for a better person to host it.
Aw.
But we are down in Texas currently. And so we're going to be here until the end of June because we're crazy now because my kids need some help. So we're down here in Texas for a little bit. And then we still have events and stuff to go on. So the rally calendar is filling up and we're going to be out and on our way sooner than we know. So,
So you'll be on the move again in
yeah.
June. Yeah. And that's a life of a full time, especially somebody who you're in a unique position because you're full time on the road, but you're also in an RV adjacent business.
Right. So
So
actually, that has defined our travels for the last several years. Especially so when we first started going back into rallies with the company, we did 3 or 4 year. And I just started knocking on doors virtually, of course, sending emails saying, "How do I get into this rally?" And
Mhm.
so, but now we have more than we can fulfill asking for us to come. And so we don't send every team to do a rally. Frank and I actually are the primary group, and then we have one other team that primarily does rallies. But even in between those rallies, Frank and Alan are both doing installs. So I do have other guys on the team, but their wives don't want to do rallies with us. So it does take a full team to do a rally because somebody has to man the booth and somebody has to do inspections. So, we need both parties to be active. So we are still looking for a couple more, but I mean, this year, the rally season as it fills up, we just go with what we can.
Right. Like we all do in this lifestyle, particularly, but probably everybody. You go with the flow. You do what you can do with what you have right now.
Right.
Let's talk about what it is that you do. So you are, you're a multi-passionate person. You've got the RV roofing solutions business. You've got learntorv.com. You've got a whole history of what you call road schooling, which I like. That's great.
Yep.
Did I get everything or is there more, Jennifer? Well, you're a mom
So
of 7.
yeah, so there's also learn to RV the podcast.com, which is,
Yeah.
just new this year. So we do have our own podcast. And then we are actually in the process by, I don't know when this airs, but on May 15th,
Mhm.
our course, Learn to RV the course, will be live. And Steve Gallagher of Campfires and Motors came on um, and set up our store because he's like, you need a store. So there's going to be merch coming real soon too. So we're going to have almost all of it. So I don't know what else we can do to make this any better, but I need a few more hours in my day is what the reality is.
You are building an empire over there. It is amazing to watch. And I was just looking through that course earlier today, and it's very comprehensive. All of the
And that's
questions that
just the
people ask,
beginning. It's
right?
just the beginning. That's what the neat part is about that. There are other courses in the works behind the scenes. But the first one, we got to get the first one out to do the second and the third and the fourth. So like there's
Right.
going to be layers to it. What's neat is in the pre-sale stage, you got access if you bought like before it launched, you got access to all of them at the same time. And we're trying
Mhm.
to make it super affordable. So anybody that's thinking about RVing has a concise place to go. And the other side of it is I don't want it to be like, if you can't afford to buy the course, you can't get the information.
Mm-hmm.
So literally all the information is somewhere in the framework of Learn to RV or the podcast. You just need a lot of hours to get through all the content to get all the information that's in the course.
Right. It's all out. It's all out there, and we've
This
all
is
learned
just
it.
neatly put
We've all learned it
together.
the hard way. You've
Yeah.
just made it easy, which is great. Great. How long have you been RVing?
So we hit the road. Well, first of all, I have to tell you, I never wanted to do this. Like, over my dead body, ever wanted to do this. Frank
Really?
actually came to me 7 years before we hit the road and said he wanted to do this. And I said, no, thank you. I don't. And so it would be a year after he retired. I actually went down. I was in youth ministry for many years, and I was working for a guy down in Oceanside for about 3 years during our time down there at a church that was a pretty famous youth pastor. He wrote a movie called To Save a Life. Well, Jim calls
Mm.
me up, and I had just had Judah, who's our youngest. He was 4 months old at the time, and he said, Jen, the girls miss you. And so, can you come down? It's senior weekend. And so I did. And when I got home from that weekend, I looked at Frank and I said, we're supposed to go on the road full time in an RV. And he said, a little louder. I said, we're supposed to go full time in an RV. And he said, wait, I can't hear you. And I was like, all right, we're supposed to go full time in an RV. And so that was supposed to be a 5-year plan. And we hit the road in 2013. And so far, that 5-year plan is on its 13th year. And so in July, we'll start year 14. It's
Wow.
crazy.
Do you see an end in sight,
I
or
I don't. Um,
no?
I tell people a lot of times, I think some of our favorite places are because of the people that we know are going to be there. And so the challenge for us is that, there's places the kids have settled down. So some of the kids have grown up and moved out. And so there's some of the places the kids have settled down. And, I'd like to say to you, but we have 7 of them. So as they all scatter across the country, where's home going to be? As a Marine
Right.
Corps family, I don't know that we would ever go back to upstate New York, which is where we originally launched from years and years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But none of us have any real ties to that area. So I think it's like trying on wedding dresses. The more places you go, the more things you experience, the harder it is to pick one. And so I
Mm-hmm.
think that's the stage in which we are personally at. So, and Frank
Yeah.
loves traveling. So we've never actually traveled. We go to the same places year round because of rallies and events and,
Sure.
but we've never actually traveled. Like, I can't tell you I'm going to be in Orlando, Florida in December every year. I can't tell you that because
Right.
chances are that's not true.
Got a plan to be flexible.
Right.
Yeah. So Frank, your husband, had the idea. You were against it, and then you had your mind changed for you
Yeah.
and the rest is history. Do you love it
Yeah.
now?
I do mostly. I mean, it's like anything, there's days that are hard. I don't want you to
Mhm.
go into RV life thinking it's easy all the time.
Mhm.
The day that the truck broke down and we lost the engine, I was ready to quit. That was 2016.
Mm.
Obviously I didn't. The broke down engine club is not a fun club to have. The day the bearings went out on a bridge crossing into Alabama, was not a fun day, but in a house we'd have things break.
Mhm.
And so we just look at it like, we can either focus on the bad stuff or look at all the good things we get to do. I would have never met you if we weren't still traveling when we met you a couple years
Exactly.
ago. And
Yeah.
so, I think there's so much good in this lifestyle, but I do think it's gotten harder to connect with people the older I'm getting
Mm.
and since 2020, which is
Why do you
interesting
think
too.
that yeah, why do you think that is?
So I think it's actually how we started interacting with each other as a whole, as a community.
Mhm.
Pre 2020, it was so easy to say, hey, let's do a potluck or let's go out to dinner together. And I think that the world became so divided. As far as finding friends for me, I think as I've aged, it's become harder. And
Mm.
so I think it's harder for older couples to make friends on the road personally, or maybe it's just because I still have kids and I'm having a
You
hard
need to
time
play
connecting that
pickleball,
way.
Jennifer. You need to play
That's
pickleball.
that's the key, huh?
Yeah.
So it used to be I could just go to the playground and or the pool and meet the other moms, but now the other
Mhm.
well, first of all, I have teenagers now. So,
Right.
Judah is 14, Aaron is 16, and Gus is 19, and none of the three of them want to really hang. Well, my oldest daughter will still traveling with us, will still hang out with me. But the reality is, but she wants to go shopping, right? So,
Right.
you know, so, but like it's different, because I meet a lot of young moms and they're like, my kids have actually been told to their face, oh, don't bother her today. They're hanging out with their grandma. And so I'm in my 50s now. And so it's just a different time. Most
Hmm.
of the people that are my age are empty nesters. And so they
Hmm.
don't have teenagers. They don't, and what people don't realize is when they meet me is my teenagers don't want to come to dinner with us. So it's okay to do couple stuff.
Right. Right. Oh, interesting. So you
Yeah.
feel like you have kind of a stigma because you still have the kids
Yeah.
with you, and there's a certain assumption
Right. Well,
about
especially
that.
Thursdays and Fridays, they've got their classes online, they run late into the evening because they're on out school. And so, like, we have a lot of nights that are just Frank and I doing stuff because the kids, they're happy making, ramen. We'll leave them something at home or, put a pizza in the oven for them, but they're old enough
Mhm.
to actually put their own pizza in the oven too. So
That's great. Yeah. Those are good years.
I'm
So,
I'm learning how to embrace them because I'm at the tail end of them. It kind of still feels weird to
yeah.
me because, but
Yeah.
I also tell people they're easier years than having well, no, they're harder years than having toddlers in some ways. Because I don't, I don't know. Having adult children is a whole nother level.
Oh, it is. Teens and adults, their mistakes have bigger ramifications.
And you can't really say anything to them to
Yeah.
fix it. It's not like,
Mhm.
somebody bumped their knee and you can put a Band-Aid on it.
Right.
You just got to listen and hope that, hope for the best. And so,
Hope
and you got to keep some of your opinions to yourself and just
yes.
hang on for the ride.
Right? Fasten that seatbelt for sure.
Yeah.
So did you have 7 with you? Because you have 7 total.
Yeah.
Did you have all 7 when you hit the road in 2013?
So yes and no. So
Okay.
all of them lived at home when we decided to hit the road.
Mhm.
My 18-year-old daughter at the time, she's 31 now, said,
Mhm.
love you, mean it. See ya. I'm out. So she moved out. This life wasn't for her. She did come back several years later, like 4 years later, pregnant, and she did travel with us and have my granddaughter while she was traveling with us. We
Wow.
settled down for a short period of time in Texas, which is how my second born, my son, met his wife. So
Oh,
all things have ramifications. Remember this.
yes.
So so at one point we had all 7 kids plus a grandbaby on the road. But for the
Wow.
most part, we traveled with 6 out of 7 of the kids. And so that's how the journey began, was with 6 of them in we had a 30-foot travel trailer with no slides. And in 2016, we upgraded to a fifth wheel because they grew too big and they didn't fit in their bunks anymore. Because everybody did have a
Mm.
dedicated sleeping space that was very important to us. And so we just use the outside as our playground or, and on rainy days, well, on rainy days, we'd cuddle up on my bed and watch a movie. I mean, sometimes a whole bunch of us.
Right. Oh, wow. Must have been a king size.
Yeah,
I hope. So, how did the kids reflect back on growing up in this way?
sure. It depends on which one you ask.
Oh.
So yeah. So, I mean, some of them, have really fun memories. Some of
Uh-huh.
them didn't have fun memories at 18, but now at 24 are like, I'm glad I did this.
Mhm.
My third born, um, his name is Micah, and Micah actually planned to backpack Europe, and he had money saved to do that. But in 2020 was when he was going
Mm.
to leave. And so
Mm.
all of his plans changed. He ended up staying home for a couple more years, um, and now lives on his own with his brother. And they're looking to part ways here shortly, which is what brought us back to Texas, is we're helping
Mhm.
them move out of the house they rented. So
Right.
it's
Yeah.
definitely very interesting having nomadic kids launch because they don't necessarily have a home base.
Right.
There's ways you can do that, but it's definitely got its ins and outs. Like, you need to have family friends in areas. They need to have something, um, you know, Justin was tied down to somebody, in Texas that helped because he's
Mhm.
got their family here. We come back through. Fortunately, we have, membership campgrounds in the area, so we can kind of come and go in and out of the park for as long as we need to when we're in the area. We just have to manage our booking window well.
Sure. Sure. What would you say is the best thing about having chosen this lifestyle and that you're continuing to live it? What's the best thing about it?
So, I mean, first of all, I would say learning alongside my kids, but we always did that. So we weren't like some family that was, the kids were never in public school. They were all homeschooled. So in
Okay.
Frank's military career, we always got orders in April or like October or November. All the times where you don't want to pick up and move your family is when we got orders to go.
Mhm.
So we didn't have to choose when we got to do that. So it started out as just kind of a way to learn with the kids.
Mhm.
Um, but as they're getting older and they don't wanna go do stuff with us, or they don't wanna go to the farmer's market, or they don't wanna go do so I think it's making Frank and I go back to our roots because we always were the people that went to, a farm for the day or something, and so, like, that adventure's never changed for him or I.
Mhm.
So I feel like that's kind of the spark that stays with us is that travel side of things is something that we both enjoy doing, whether that's going to a hot air balloon festival or that's, just having dinner out locally, or maybe it's just walking around the campground, going up to the pool that day. Um, I think that, you have to like being with each other if you're going to be married
Mm.
and do this. But at the same
Mhm.
time, finding people that you want to do it with is just as important. Community is so central to this lifestyle.
Mhm. I don't know if I could, because we are full-timers as well. I don't know how I would have handled this lifestyle before virtual connection was so prevalent. I
It
spend
was
a
hard.
lot of time on Zoom.
Yeah, so our first 5 months on the road, we didn't meet another road schooling family, and how we met our road schooling first road schooling family is kind of a crazy one. We had just recently joined a company called Thousand Trails, and so
Mhm.
our Thousand Trails membership, um, we were in Virginia, and my son was bit by a dog, and we just happened to be parked right next door to a neighbor that had bikes outside and had just introduced themselves as a full-time family. They were the first full-time family we met. They're no longer on the road, like so many other full-time families. The
Mm.
average family stays on the road anywhere from, I would say, 18 months to 4 years is pretty
Mm.
much the average. So, and it's not the first time you meet a family that you always connect. So that's where it gets
Right.
harder, because, and the longer we're on the road, the less likely my kids are willing to step in that gap until they meet them once or twice or three
Mhm.
times because they want to know that relationship's going to last. But in that moment, I was forced with a decision, much like I would have been as a Marine wife, trust this family to watch my kids for a couple hours because my son literally had part of his nose bit off.
Mm.
It wasn't a moment where I got to decide if this was the right choice or the wrong choice. It just happened to be that it worked out to be the right choice. And then we
Mhm.
found this whole community once we got to Florida. And I remember thinking, so in 2013, I guess it was 2014 by then, we were at the end of, winter season. So, early March,
Mhm.
everybody's saying goodbye. There are 13 families at Thousand Trails Orlando. And I was like, wow, that's a lot of people. But today, if you go to Thousand Trails Orlando in the winter, you're going to see 100 to 120 families. And so that
Mhm.
number has exponentially changed, but that community is changing and evolving all the time. So it just depends on how you're looking for that community. And that community you don't always fit in, even if there are 120. How many of them have teenagers now? How many of them are okay with being friends with a mom in their 50s? So, it's definitely a different demographic now than it was then. It's not
Mhm.
bad, it's just different.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're not always going to make connections in any room that you walk into,
Correct. And
regardless of the situation.
well, and I think it's clicky too. I mean, like, I think it's hard to make friends on the road. I think that, we're more reluctant. A lot of people will stay in and watch a movie versus going up to a clubhouse and playing cards with each other today than they did back before 2020 happened. And so I
Mm.
think that there's less things that happen. I didn't even think about picking up pickleball. That might be a good idea. Just
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah. It's a blast. I love it. It's fun. And I'm not very good at it by any stretch
Well,
of
that's
the
my concern is not being good
imagination.
at it.
No, I'm not good
I
at
was
it. That's
actually at a
okay.
rally this past week. We went to the Adventure Bandits rally. Super neat couple. Ashanti and Talmage have their own YouTube channel and they're hosting these rallies and they're not associated with anything else, but they did karaoke.
Oh,
And it was the
fun.
first time I've ever been to karaoke where you didn't have to be good to participate.
Oh, really?
They sing anyway. And
Is
if
anybody
they're
good
not
at
singing,
karaoke?
if they're not singing, well, I don't know. I've always been to karaoke's where everybody seems like they're better than me, so I don't
Oh,
sing.
wow.
So yeah,
Aw. Well, fun though. Yeah, that's the funnest if people just kind of let go of, of all the judgment and just enjoy, enjoy and have. I think that's so much fun. We had in our very first year, we hit the road. So we spent 6 months in our rig getting ready to go, trying to get our house sold and everything. And then we left in November 2021. And that winter, we were in Port St. Joe, Florida, and we were at a campground where one of the guys, it wasn't a resort driven thing. It was just one of the guys at the campground happened to be a karaoke DJ guy. And so a few times set his stuff up outside under the pavilion, and people just gathered and sang, and not
but
all
that
of it was
organic
good.
stuff is so much fun. Like I feel like that
Yeah.
organic stuff is what is sometimes missing from
Mhm.
so many places. And
Mhm.
so do you stay like long-term seasonally in the winter time typically?
It changes. It changes. We've done this year we just stayed a month down south, and then we came back to a lot that we own in Arkansas and spent January, February, and we're still here. Um, just change of pace. We just
Right.
wanted to do things differently this year. Next year, we will be down south for 3 months. That is already
Yep.
decided.
So
Too cold.
we don't typically stay in one place for more than a month. And
Mm,
so the month of January, because we do the Tampa Super Show the last couple of years, I've rented a space for one whole month. But it's very rare that we do that. So a lot of times we'll be 2 weeks, 3 weeks max at any site.
mm,
And it's usually about 2 weeks. I'd say that's our sweet spot. And
mhm,
then when we're on run chases, like if Frank does have to do installs or if we're doing rallies, that changes as we go. And then the
mhm,
only other place we typically will buy a month but not stay quite that long is Goshen, Indiana, because we do a whole bunch of stuff up in Goshen in August. And so
mhm,
that's always fun with the tornado sirens. But the
mhm.
rallies that we do there, we usually do the Frog Rally and the Grand Design Rally and the Montana Owners Club Rally. And so we're doing all that in between. So, and then we're producing videos for the podcast in between all that and content for the blog. So there is no downtime. Like
What
it's,
is Well, let's look at that. So, I mean, you've got the kids, you've been road schooling for gazillion years. So, to me, I tried homeschooling my daughter for like 6 months in high school, and it was not good. So, I have much respect for anybody who takes it on and is successful at it. And then you have these businesses. So, what does a day in the life look like for you?
Yep. So it depends on the day. And it depends on which coast this install is starting on. So that's one of the things we do split is so I handle the sales side of the company and I have a sales manager that's come on board just recently.
Mhm.
We did have our son managing the sales manager role, but it wasn't a good fit for him. Um, Mary is the wife of one of our technicians. She handles a lot of the calls and doling them out to the team. And then once something sells, it goes to Frank. So, like service side, if guys are on a roof, they're calling him. So we both get phone calls for very different reasons. So
Mhm.
we typically don't answer RV Roofing Solutions calls unless it's Monday through Friday, sometimes Saturday mornings. But most of those leads that come in off the website, we're going to try and keep some normal hours to that. For Learn to RV, that's a whole nother thing because it depends on the day. So
Mhm.
we drop 3 podcasts a week. And so we're writing blog posts in between that. And the podcasts are having, blogs that like collaborate with it. And then we're posting it on YouTube and growing that channel. Tampa is a pretty good example of what my life has turned into. So this year was the first year ever that I went into Tampa as both a business owner and I don't even like this word, a content creator, a social media influencer. So I got the press pass and the whole thing. But that meant I had to be at 10 more things than I normally have to be at. So, so it's a very
Yeah.
busy lifestyle now, for
Yeah.
sure. And I don't know that I saw us being this busy.
Mhm.
Um, I love what we do on every front, but in this next couple of years, the plan is to have someone else managing RV roofing solutions. So there's a plan in place to get Frank offers within the next 3 to 5 years. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I'll ever let go of the reins of Learn to RV because it's kind of my heart project. In fact, I've got
Mm-hmm.
more ideas for Learn to RV than I can shake a stick at. So basically, I have to get it under control and other people paid to do it. So that was
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that we did this year is, we do the main podcast drop on Mondays. And so, if you go to learntorv.com, there's like the whole ecosystem's right there with links to get to all of it.
Yeah.
But on Wednesdays, this year on season 2, we started what's called Beyond the Brand, and that's actually a paid episode reach. So we are keeping it very affordable for businesses to come on and do a 30 to 35-minute podcast with us, which, as you know, that's a great way to get your business out there because it stands out there forever and you can
Mm-hmm.
share it. Um, but that's a paid segment. And so that's going to start funding Learn to RV. And so we just looked at ways that we didn't have to have people pay for the information. And so we feel like businesses are out there making money. They'd have ad spend anyways. Why not spend it with Learn to RV?
There you go.
We've
There you
got the
go.
audience.
You do have the audience and you have the experience. And
Yeah.
I mean, for good reason. The audience is there because the content is valuable.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the relationships are there too. So
Well,
that's
and
really
that ultimately was what I wanted. As a vendor in the
good.
space, we're seeing events change across the country. There are more and more creators like the Adventure Bandits doing an event, but they're not mindful of what's going on the same week as they're hosting. And so that's happening across the country. For example, this year, Escapees, which is a great big thing that happens up in Maine,
Mm-hmm.
which I am now flying into because it's my community. I can't take the RV there because less than 2 weeks later, we have to be in Sedalia, Missouri for Family RV Association. And so the problem is everything's being put together too closely. And a
Mm-hmm.
lot of us that are vendors are still family owned or smaller businesses. And so having the teams to handle all of the events is almost impossible in this industry right now.
That's fascinating because it is a growing industry. And I have a guest coming up in a few weeks who is building RV resorts s- and it's a hugely growing industry still, which is surprising to me. You
But
would
it's
think we
shifting. So we have lots of friends that own RV resorts, and
Mhm.
we're hearing back. I'm actually in the process of putting something together to get some information from RV resort owners on what it looks like this year versus last year. Because RV resort owners, the place that I'm in right now, we're up in Onalaska, Texas. And
Mhm.
so it's right on Lake Livingston. It's a great resort. We leave tomorrow, but last week there were 130 rigs in here for the event. This week
Mhm.
there might be 20. There's a
Interesting.
restaurant on site. There's a huge pool, a huge hot tub. They don't have pickleball courts, but they have a
Oh,
great playground and you got lake access literally at the campground. There's literally no reason that they're not packed to the walls on the weekends, and they're not. It's crazy. And we're seeing that shift across the country. My co-host Tasha's up in Kentucky right now at
mhm.
a little campground called Firefly Hills. And she said she's the only person in there other than her work campers.
Interesting. What is this, May? So it is season. It's season
Yeah.
for folks to be out and about.
I
I
think
mean,
it's the fuel prices. I think people are scared to go
sure.
too far from home.
Sure.
But it's definitely shifting things. So,
Sure.
it'll be interesting to see how the rallies change this year because, we're not quite knee deep in that yet. So,
Right. Well, and that speaks volumes for shifting some of this stuff to more virtual, like doing the podcasts and doing the virtual information and the courses and things like that, because people don't want to drive. They don't want to spend the gas.
yeah.
They don't want to
Well, and
spend the
even
money
your
to
summit
travel.
was a great way
Yeah.
to get that information out there. There's
Yeah.
things that we talked about in that people would normally go to seminars for.
Mm-hmm.
But even that is shifting because the seminars, like, at the rallies, you don't have to, once you get into the rally, a lot of the companies are going to have seminars, but they're going to be sales seminars, not just educational seminars. And so
Right.
the challenge there is, the seminars that are being offered, are they education based because the person knows what they're doing, or are they more like Facebook information where you think this is how you do it? And so you need to vet those people too, and not all companies do that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. Well, it'll be interesting to see how things move and shake. But it'll be the people who are creating the content that does have the backbone behind it that are going to stick around.
Right. Well, and that
Those are
was
the
why the
ones.
podcast, because
Yeah.
when we started the podcast, I will never forget that day. So my friend Robin came to me and she said, "You should start a podcast." And I looked at her and said, "I should not start a podcast. I have way too much on my table." And so, and then by
Reminds
like
me of the whole RV conversation.
Yep. So I mean, like 5 weeks later, we were launching our first 5 podcast episodes at Hershey. So we literally hit our 66th today or 67th that just came out. I don't know. It's a lot for
Hmm.
under a year old podcast. And so we produce 3 a week. The other one we produce drops on Thursdays. That one's actually called our Community Spotlight. And that's for anybody in the RV community that wants to share their story. And so that's not limited. It's just, if you want to hop on a call and we just record it and I ask questions and it's much like this. There's no practice, there's authenticity and, we want to share our story. So this past week, I got to meet a gentleman named Thomas and
Hmm.
Thomas needs a kidney. And so during the event here to sit down with Thomas and his wife, Denise, and find out how we can help him. So he'll be one of our next community spot. Well, not next, but within the next month, you'll see Thomas's story come out on Learn to RV the podcast, because I think that those stories matter just as much as the ones where you're having all the fun in the world up in Alaska. So, I mean, like, I
Right.
think there's a side to all of it. So,
Well, yeah, it's humanity. And just because we live um, either full part-time in an RV doesn't mean we don't have the same issues that everyone else on the planet is having, the health issues, the day-to-day stuff. And I think when you live in an RV, you're not doing all the campfires either.
right. Well, and that's the other side of it. Is a lot of people say to me, I don't need to learn how to RV, so why would I go to your website? And I would say I would challenge you to go because I think there's something there all the time that's for everybody.
Hmm.
Today we actually launched out David Titley's episode, and he was the Admiral of the United States Navy, and he has a thing called RV Weather, which is really cool, but it wasn't here 4 years ago. And so, like, we're continuously on the lookout for new gear, new tools, new innovative ways to do something, or maybe
Hmm.
it's just something you've never done before that you learn a new method to. And so,
Hmm.
Learn to RV is about so much more than just learning how to RV for the first time. So, yeah, I think there's way more to it than that.
Yeah, it's camaraderie too.
Yeah.
And a space like that, if you are well versed in being an RVer, then maybe you have something to contribute. I always,
Absolutely. So we actually
yeah.
bring on teams to write for us. That's one
Hmm.
of the ways that a lot of our teams come on board. So we have people that write for us. We have YouTubers that come on that produce content for us. And I can't offer them money for that yet, but what they do is they get a free spot to advertise for their channel when they do that. We also have free community groups, so we're not gatekeeping those. On Facebook, we have Learn to RV, the friendly informative group. We have Ladies Chick Chat, so it's just girls only. And that was born at a Tiffin rally, actually, because I had one woman come up to me and say, "My husband won't tell me how to do a checklist. Do you have a checklist? Because if something ever happened to him, I don't know how to do it. And I'm not comfortable because he makes fun of me when I ask." And I'm like, well, we could create a group for that. So then there's the Roadschooling
Oh,
Resources
wow.
group, which is almost 4,000 families strong. We have a military families on the road group because my husband being a military retiree, we wanted a space for military families to go. And so like on Learn to RV, there's community spaces. We also have a
Hmm.
rally calendar. So if you're looking for a way to get connected, one of the things as a business owner looking for rallies, there was never really one good place to find rallies. So I let everybody submit their rally. I post them for free. So the links that are on them go straight to their event. So I'm not responsible for what they send me. But at the same time, you can find events near you. So if the gas mileage is bad for like going to an international or a one place rally, there's tons more out there. There's probably one closer than you think it is to find people.
Oh, I love that. And it's so smart. It's so smart because when you can provide content like that everybody wants, you know, it makes it convenient for everybody, then they're gonna, that just pays you back tenfold in good
Right.
karma and business and traffic and all the things that count, right?
And if they want the course, they can buy that too real soon.
Right. I see. I saw the lifetime access for that. So that's a good deal. It's a
Yeah,
good
it
deal.
is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome. So what would you say is um what makes it good? What if we could have like a final thought, a nutshell thought, is this RV lifestyle what makes your life good, or what do you surround yourself or do that makes you feel like you are just getting the most you can out of life?
I would say it's the people. Like,
Mm,
traveling is great. You can see the things, but you can see it's like having just enough money to do everything you want to do, but not having the connections. I think the connections are the key. And so, that's why there's groups. That's why there's connection points. That's why there's intersections. And so everything about this lifestyle, if you are doing it all by yourself, most people don't last more than a year or two. And it's because they don't find their people. And so I'm
right.
fortunate, I am a connector. The
Mm.
first couple years on the road, I was great at connecting people. I would introduce you to somebody else and I go, "Oh, you'll love Kimberly because you got to meet her and she's this, this, and this." And you'd become friends with Sally, and all of a sudden you'd be best friends with Sally, and I'd work myself out of a friendship. 4 or 5 years later,
Oh,
I was
oh
actually
no.
realizing that I was doing that. And so
Oh.
now I'm more intentional about finding friendships myself. In fact,
Mm-hmm.
last year when we started the podcast, I had 2 co-hosts. I no longer have 2 co-hosts, but I did then. And I was so afraid to introduce them to each other because I was
Oh.
afraid the same thing would happen. And so I became very protective of a few friendships in my life because I wasn't good at making them for myself, but I was great
Mm-hmm.
at seeing who you'd get along with. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think that, finding your tribe and it sounds trite, but it's not. You have to put yourself out there. Um, we'll go back to Jim from New Song. He actually used to say, to find a friend, you have to be friendly. And so I think that that's really the key. We actually next week have a whole podcast on friendship coming out. And Joni Lee came on. She's got a brand new podcast rolling out as our guest co-host for that week. And I think friendship, especially with women on the road, is so hard. I think we make it hard. I am the type of woman that is, if I say something and it offends you, please tell me. But not everybody's like that, and I want to
Right.
work past it, um, or get through it and not hate each other about it because I just don't think there's time in the world for that. I also live by a motto, and we learned it our first year on the road, is just love people where they're at no matter what. You don't know what people are
Yeah.
going through. You don't know why they're on the road. Some people are at an end of life journey. Some people, are doing it solo after losing a spouse. Some people are doing it because the kids grew up and they don't know what to do with their life. And so some of those genuine, like, I'm only on the road for 2 years, that's just part of their journey and you have to accept them where they are. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think that's just as important.
Mm-hmm. I love that you said that. And that's a great place to end, but I want to say this is that we can become cliquish, as you used that phrase earlier, the full-timers versus the people who only made it a year or two versus the ones that are part-time versus the ones who maybe go out a week a year on the RV journey. But there's a place for all of it.
Yep.
There's a place for all of it, and it all adds to our lives. It gives us all different experiences,
Yeah,
which is what we're
totally.
ultimately after,
Yeah.
right?
It's a,
Yeah.
it's a beautiful lifestyle. Um,
Mhm.
and I think that we do exactly what you said, which is, say, "Oh, well, you live in a house half the year. I can't be friends with you." What if you
Right.
visited those friends in the summer? What if you were intentional about meeting up again? And so, like, what if you meet somebody in an RV park that lives in an RV full time and they believe that makes them a full-time RVer, and it does. Like, you don't get to decide whether or not they're full-time. Like, they're
Right.
full-time in their RV living stationary. That's not how I'd do it. Like, no, I'd go back to a house if I had to be stationary full-time.
Yeah.
That's just too, because I mean, Frank and I would kill each other in the same space, in the same place all year long. And so, we'd have to have something to go to, an office, a garage, something. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean that as in, we still need community. Even when you go back to a house, you need community. You need people you go do things with, coffee shops, bookstores. game places. It's one of the newest things. My kids now, this year, we tried something brand new for us. We'd never done an Outschool class. My kids play Dungeons and Dragons on Outschool with other kids across the country. And so it's just a great way for them to connect with people that have like interests, especially when we're in places that don't have the things they're really interested in. So like if we're in Las Vegas, there's lots of places to go play a D&D match at a game store. But
Oh,
you know,
wow.
here in Texas, that doesn't exist. And so next week, my daughter's actually going to go into the library and she's going to volunteer. And so she's going to volunteer for all, whatever, 6 weeks we're going to be in Texas. She's got a driver's license and we're going to make it work. And so it'll give her a chance to maybe meet a few new people. Those people will stay here and we won't, and she won't. But you know, it's
Right.
okay because you can have friends all over the country. And the next time we come back here, she'll have people she can still hang out with.
She'll still have those people. And in the day and age that we live in, she can stay in contact with those people
Oh,
from
100%.
the road.
Yes.
I think we just live in an incredible time
Yeah,
where we have the best of both worlds. It's amazing.
absolutely. You know,
Yeah.
shooting somebody a message on Facebook Messenger in between the times that you can see them and taking the time to do that is very important in our lifestyle. But, you
Mhm.
know, those groups are also just as important. You know, I think that, you know, there's like if you're a business owner, there's plenty of spaces to ask in a business community, you know, hey, I'm having a hard time this week making my sales. What are some ideas that you might have for marketing? And so we have that whether we're adults or we're kids. And so, but
Yes,
it's a matter of stepping in the ring and putting yourself out there.
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, if you want to get some advice from Jennifer, go to learntorv.com. Or if you need a roof on your RV, or not a roof, but a treatment for your roof, talk to Jennifer.
So it's a
RV,
maintenance free roofing system. So you can do it before you
yes,
have a leak or after. We do them all. But yeah, it's rvroofing.solutions.com. So you can find us there. We're family owned and operated.
do it before you have a leak. That makes so much more sense.
But we
That's
do it for
great.
both people. Like,
Yeah.
you know, and people come from all over that way.
Yeah.
But we go to them too. So it's a premium service. So
It's amazing. All right. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with me for a little while this afternoon. It is a blast as always. And thanks for all that you're doing for the RV community and really for the community at large.
well, thanks so much for having me on. I was so excited to be invited.
Be sure to check the show notes for links mentioned in this episode and join us in the Living the Good Life Facebook community for previews of each episode, the opportunity to pose questions directly to our guests, bonus content, and a community of people committed to living their best life and sharing the journey. Thanks for listening. Let us know what value you received from this episode and what you'd like us to explore in the future in the comments. And please take a moment to drop us a like or some stars. I'm Kimberly Henry. Let's get out there and live the good life.